Welcome to Tell Us Something. Thanks for being here tonight to support live storytelling in Missoula. My name is Mark Moss. I'll be your host for the evening. I'm the founder and executive director at Tell Us Something. This presentation is being recorded by Missoula Community Access Television as part of a media assistance grant donated to Tell Us Something by MCAT. Winter is traditionally a time when we slow down. Our indigenous friends during winter share stories that they don't share at other times of year. Tell Us Something acknowledges that we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Pend Oreille, Salish, and Kootenai peoples. Traditionally, storytelling is reserved for the winter months for many tribes. This was a practical choice given the fact that during the other seasons, people were busy growing, gathering, and hunting food. It is in the winter, with the long, dark evenings, the snow and the wind blowing outside, that telling stories is used to entertain and teach the children. Another reason for winter storytelling is that many traditional stories contain animal characters. To be respectful, people wait until the winter when animals hibernate or become less active so they cannot hear themselves being talked about. We take this moment to honor the land and its native peoples and the stories that they share with us. Some housekeeping and sponsor thanks to start us off. Thanks to Imagination Brewing Company for providing the non-alcoholic beer out there at the bar. The theme is Hold My Beer, after all. And they are the only brewery in the state of Montana to brew non-alcoholic beer to my knowledge. So thanks to Imagination. Remember that Tell Us Something stories sometimes have adult themes and storytellers sometimes use adult language. Thank you for choosing to join us this evening. I know that you have many options regarding on how to spend your time and money, and I'm grateful that you have chosen to be here now. Well, getting way ahead of myself. Okay. Tonight is historical in that, there is a perception that Tell Us Something always sells out. Well, that isn't true. We generally give away over 100 tickets. Tonight we gave away about 120, but for the first time in history, the Denison Theater, we have sold out. Thank you. So I'm guessing there are a bunch of new folks here. Is that right? Yeah, okay. So here's what's going to happen. We have 8 storytellers. They each have 10 minutes to share their true personal story on the theme, Hold My Beer. At 9 minutes, we're going to hear a little gong. We've got board member Taylor Burby running the gong tonight. Can you give us a little sense of what that sounds like? That doesn't mean, get off the stage. That means, hey, storyteller, if you're not paying attention, wrap it up. And so they're supposed to be on point for 10 minutes. If they aren't done at 10 minutes, she'll give us another gong that'll be a little louder. And if they're still going after 11 minutes, she's going to really knock into it. And if they're still going, I'll walk up and go, hey. That's only had to happen once, really. So one of the things I like to do is to get grounded together. So what I'd like to do, if you'll humor me, is let's breathe. And I do this just as much for me as for you and the tellers. It helps us get centered and relaxed. So we're going to take 3 deep breaths together. And on the third breath, we're going to hum. I know it feels weird. Trust me, it's really cool. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. It is important to actively listen to one another, join together, and support one another by sharing stories. When we do this, we can better connect with our own individual stories, with each other, and with our community. This is your community. These are your stories. The stories you hear at each Tell Us Something are by and for members of our community. Our storytellers tonight have worked very hard to bring you their stories. Can we all agree to give them the respect that they deserve by actively listening to them? Please, I have to do this too. Please silence your cell phones and other mobile devices. You came to listen, let the listening begin. Thank you for your support of each other and of each other's stories. Tell Us Something believes that everyone has a story and everyone's story matters. Our first storyteller this evening is Jeremy Keene. Jeremy graduated from the University of Colorado in 1994, landed a 3-month temp job in Missoula, and never left. He met his wife, Heather, and they raised 2 talented daughters who are now flung far and wide in the world. After a long career engineering streets and highways, Jeremy became the City Public Works Director in 2019. When he's not sailing on Flathead Lake, you might find him riding mountain bikes in the hills around Missoula or playing beer league hockey at the Glacier Ice Rink. Please welcome Jeremy Keene.
Hey everybody, wow. So you all know what a Big Gulp is, right? It's that 32-ounce cup that you get at 7-Eleven, comes with a lid and a straw, and your favorite soft drink in it. We don't have 7-Eleven around here, but you know what I'm talking about. Every convenience store has one of these things. Well, the best thing we ever did with a Big Gulp was we glued it to the top of my brother's car. It was my friend Willie's idea. He found this tube of super glue in the glove box. And he was like a little kid at Christmas. He's all looking around and smiling and like, we gotta glue something. So Willie was actually my brother's friend. We were all going to school together in Boulder, Colorado. And we'd hang out. Willie was one of those people you were just kind of drawn to, his energy and his mischief, like moths to a flame. And one of our favorite things to do is to go on road trips. My brother had this 1973 Volvo station wagon that he got from our parents. It was bright yellow, had a 4-speed manual and way too many miles. We'd pack that thing full of sleeping bags and potato chips and beer, some extra oil, till the back end sagged like it wouldn't make it around the block. But it did, and we went places. We went to Newport Beach and went to Mexico and went to the Grand Canyon. And Willie would always go along. It wasn't like, you didn't have to ask him or anything, he'd just show up. He'd have his long underwear and his cutoff shorts and his pillow in one hand and his toothbrush in the other. You know, going on road trips with your buddies is a little bit different than going on road trips with your parents. This is the same car we used to take family road trips in. But when you go with your buddies, you see life through a different lens. And Willie's lens was like a carnival. So the last road trip we ever did with Willie was we went to Mardi Gras. And we were hanging around in the backyard, waiting for my brother to get out of class or something like that, and fixing things on the car, which was basically Willie scraping the bugs off the windshield with this spatula that he'd found in the backyard. And he'd slap the car and say, "Fixed." So that's when he found the super glue. And then he spotted the Big Gulp in the console between the seats. And I didn't think it was a good idea to glue a cup to the top of my brother's car because, you know, it's kind of a piece of shit, but it's his car. And he's going to be pissed that we ruined the paint. But Willie thought this was the funniest thing he'd ever thought of, and he was determined. And He glued that thing right above the passenger side door where you might set it as you're getting in. And I remember there's this picture of Willie standing on the running board with his arm on the door, and he's got his mouth on the straw. And that thing stayed on for 1,500 miles. You'd be surprised the lengths that people go to tell you you've left your Big Gulp on top of the car. They would run after us as we were pulling out of the gas station. There was this whole group of church kids in a van, and it was like a slalom course driving through them as they tried to save the Big Gulp. Or people would catch up to us on the freeway going 70 miles an hour and honk and point, and we'd just wave and smile like we had no idea what they were talking about. Willie liked to do this thing he called Newtons. He'd put the car in neutral and put both feet on the floor and let it start rolling down the hill. So if you remember, Newton's law of motion is force equals mass times acceleration, where force is measured in newtons and mass is a 1973 Volvo station wagon, and acceleration is gravity, 9.8 meters per second going down the hill. And we'd all hang on and we'd watch the speedometer, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, until the people trying to save the Big Gulp would give up and fall behind. Willie also used to love to get kicked out of things. He would get us kicked out of everything. At Mardi Gras, we waited in the rain to get into this restaurant for like an hour. And by the time we got in there, we were all hungry and wet. And they put us at this little table in the middle of the whole restaurant. And I could tell it wasn't going to work. He can't sit still. He's running around, talking to everybody, slapping people on the back, buying drinks, yelling at the waitress. And the manager finally comes over, this guy named Michael. He's got Michael on his name tag, and he's real polite. He says, hey, we just need your friend to come sit down and, stop cussing so much. And, so we call Willie over and say, hey, Willie, come on, man, sit down. And he just says, I got to get more money. And he disappears out the door into the rain to find an ATM machine. Well, we don't see him again for like 30 minutes, and when we do, Michael's got him by the arm. And he says, look, your friend just has to sit down and stop swearing. And Willie immediately says, shit, Michael, your pants are too fucking tight. You should relax more often. Now, I haven't eaten anything all day. And I ordered one of these Cajun burgers with all the fixins and hush puppies on the side. And I can see back in the open kitchen, they're just about to bring our food out. And I looked at Willie, and I looked at my brother, I looked at my friend Jet. And then my brother stands up and says, well, if he goes, we all go. So I took one last look at my burger. I knew that was going to be a good burger. And then I got up and I followed my friends out the door. And outside, Willie's standing there on the sidewalk looking sorry. He's got bare feet, he's cut off shorts. He's wearing a Hawaiian shirt that's only got 2 buttons left. He's got Mardi Gras beads down to his waist, and his curly hair is all wet, hanging in his face. And I just looked at him, I said, Willie, man, where the fuck are your shoes? And right then, Michael comes back and tosses Willie's shoes out onto the sidewalk. And he sits down on the curb and kind of dejectedly puts them back on and looks at us and says, they were wet. Like that explained everything. And then he got up and looked at the people still waiting in line to get in and said, y'all don't eat there. The food sucks. We're going down to the corner where there's a hot dog stand. They've got Hurricanes. Now, Hurricanes are these rum and fruit drinks that they serve at Mardi Gras, and they come in a big plastic cup with a lid and a straw. We probably should have glued one of those to the car. I don't know when we lost the Big Gulp. When Mardi Gras was over, we drove to Pensacola so we could say we went to Florida. Sat on the beach all day and filmed a kung fu movie about Willie and my brother fighting the waves as they came into shore. And then, when the sun went down, we got in the car and started driving home. And it's probably somewhere in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning, I stopped, take a piss, and standing there in the headlights, I saw the Big Gulp was gone. All that was left was this ring of super glue on the roof. A couple years after that, Willie was gone. My brother called me and said he'd crashed his hang glider into the side of a mountain. I'd never known anybody that died before, at least nobody my age. And for a long time, I just kept thinking we'd find him again, like all those times that Willie would get lost. You could be standing there talking to Willie one minute, and the next minute he'd be gone. And then you wouldn't see him again for like 3 hours. And we'd go looking for him, because, what if something happened? But we could never find him. And then he'd just turn up later at the hotel, sleeping in front of the door. I think some people just burn so bright they're only here for a flash, like a shooting star or a bolt of lightning. And afterwards, you're never quite sure what you saw. That's how it was with Willie. I think we all know somebody like that. If he'd lived, he'd be in his 50s today, and I have a hard time imagining what he'd be like. I like remembering him when he was 20. It reminds me that not everyone gets to stay here for very long. And it reminds me I'm glad I'm still here. I'm glad I get to stay a little longer. And I know Willie's not lost. He knows where he is. We just can't find him right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Next, we have Miko Korea. Miko is a believer that a nourishing meal cooked and shared in love will advance soul healing on this planet. She is a co-creator in a sensual healing touch community, a culinary artist, a watercolor dabbler, a gypsy gardener, and an RN that has touched many lives and bodies in this community for over 25 years. Please welcome Miko Carrera.
From 1998 to 2000, I worked in a local hospital in the PACU, the Post Anesthesia Care Unit, also known as the recovery room. And several times a month, I had to carry a pager and be on call. And for those of you that are not from the pre-cell phone era, that's a way that somebody could get in touch with you. And believe it or not, I was told I needed to explain that. So, as my day off, technically, but I was an on-call day off, and if my pager buzzed, prior to my pager buzzing, I became very acutely aware of the horizon where the helicopters would be coming in. And the helicopters usually meant that somebody had something really awful happen to them, or they made a bad decision, and now they were life flighting in. So I became aware of watching the horizon, not just when I was carrying a pager, but it became a heightened sense that I noticed things in the sky. And what I would feel is my heart would start racing, my stomach would clench, my hands would get sweaty. And it really helped me to tune into that sense of embodiment like how things felt for me. And this segues into I am from those experiences of recognizing that people carry a lot of wounds, a lot of traumas. In both my career, I use the opportunity to connect and touch people to help ground them. So that kind of segued into I am a co-creator in a community here in Missoula built on helping people to ground in a sensual way to heal their collective traumas. So it's a very supportive, very loving environment, and it's pretty powerful. So part of that is also finding different ways that help me to feel grounded. And one of those ways was on the afternoon of October 13th. It was a Sunday in 2024, so 3 months ago. And I was spending an afternoon doing a shibari session. Shibari is the Japanese art of rope tying or rope bondage. And in a session, if I have ropes, when they're tied on me, they're not tight, but it allows a compression that releases an incredible amount of endorphins, so your natural opiates. And that helps relieve my autoimmune issues where I carry a lot of inflammatory side effect. But it also helps me really ground into a deep space of connection and wholeness. So on that afternoon, after that session, I was out running some errands, and I had just, as I was out running the errands, I was listening to a chorus sing. It's a song, but it's a mantra, a Hindu mantra called Om Hari Om. And Om is considered by the Hindus as the sound of the universe, or the universal sound. And in that sentence of Om Hari Om, it's a mantra to call in relief from suffering for each of us. It's like a global prayer to help relieve our suffering. And it's a beautiful choir that's singing this. So my car is just reverberating with this gentle praise music. And I turn off of 6th Street onto a side street. And so I'm in the heart of Missoula. And I look up on the horizon, and something catches my eye. And my first thought is it's a helicopter, which after all these years, I still have a bit of a response to them. And as I look at it, I say, that's going too fast. And it is literally, in less than a blink of an eye, it traveled across that half of the valley. And I stop. I'm in the middle of the road, no cars. It's a side street, not a lot of traffic. But I stop, and I look at this. And in this microsecond observation, I say, what the hell? And there above me, it's not a helicopter. It's bigger than a helicopter, but smaller than an airplane. It's kind of glowing metal, so it's got its own radiance. There are no lights, no reflectors, no propellers, no jet engines, no turbo boosters or thrusters. There is no chemtrail across the sky. It's dusk. I looked at my clock on my dashboard, and it was 5:09 p.m. And I, like super fast, took in these details that it's silver. It had kind of a triangle type shape front, and the body had what I would say would be wings, except they were tipped up and they were shaped like flattened triangles. And on the one wing, there was an arch of red or it was an arch but had red symbols. And it was like an arch, and then there was another arch below it that had red symbols, and they were just out of focus where I couldn't make out what they were. But this spacecraft was just above the tree line. And there was no seams on this craft and no windows. And immediately, I had this sense of incredible love, like grounded in love. I didn't have the sweaty hands. I didn't have like the clenched stomach. I didn't have that visceral response. It was just the opposite. It was beautiful. And as I'm looking at this spacecraft, I want to say spaceship. I mean, I've said all, it's, I said in my head, no words, in my head, because I had such an incredible sense of love, if you're a UFO, you could totally take me. And by golly, that craft slid over to the left and turned slightly toward me. And I realized at that point we were communicating. And I got a download that without words, there were no words. It was just the sense of knowing that my mission is to love myself abundantly and to let that spread out to others and to teach them about self-love and connection and let that ripple out through our planet. And I was recognizing that the sense and the feeling that I had from this experience was equal to the sense that I had when I had the ropes. Very grounded, very loving, very reassuring. And so I don't know what you would do if you saw a UFO, but this is what I did. I said, thank you. And then I drove away.
Thanks, Miko. Tom Attard was born and raised in the great state of Montana and is a father, husband, general contractor, ultra runner, and lover of all things outdoors. You can find him most dark winter mornings running a trail on any of the surrounding slopes. In constant motion from birth, Tom rarely sits still, skiing, rafting, fishing, hunting, running, and finding any excuse to get out there. Please welcome Tom Attard.
Where do you go when you get dumped on Christmas Eve? You go to the purveyors of peace, the home of the magical elixir of emotional amnesia. You go to the bar. But who are you going to find at the bar on Christmas Eve? Well, I'll tell you. You're going to find somebody who's burnt every bridge. Someone who's taxed every relationship in their life to the point of breaking. Who has no one left, no relationships to speak of. So to the bar I went. So I'm walking up to Stockman's Pool Hall in Kalispell, Montana. And I look across the parking lot and I see this big burly guy. He's got a bushy beard, smoking a cigarette. He's got a Santa hat on. I start getting closer. And look, that guy looks familiar. Lo and behold, it's my little brother Tim. Oh, and what does Tim do when he sees me? I'll tell you. He grabs me, he picks me up, he puts me on his shoulder, parades me around the entire bar, introducing me to everyone who he knows by their first name, every bartender, everyone, because my little brother lives at the bar. He is the most functional alcoholic I've ever met. He can drink all night long and get up at 5:30 in the morning to deliver drywall. You drive that boom truck. And Tim is the strongest person I've ever met. He can beat me arm wrestling on both sides while I'm using two hands. His hands are so big around that I can't even close mine around his when I go to shake his hand. And he's delivered drywall so much, one of his arms is longer than the other. This might not mean anything to you, but he can carry 2 sheets of 5/8 thick, 12-foot long sheetrock at once. He didn't pull the tape. If you've picked up one sheet, you know that that's impossible. So, calling him my little brother was a misnomer. He's taller than me, 6'3", just super strong. But I didn't have much of a relationship with my brother. For about a decade, I only saw him twice a year at most, Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that is because if you ever got a call from my little brother, it was from one of two places. He either is going to call you from jail or from the hospital. And that's because he was also the bravest person I've ever met. He never backed down from a fight. In fact, he'd fight 4 or 5 guys at once, which often lands you in the hospital. So, at this moment in time, me and my little brother, our lives merged. We became 2 peas in a pod. We were on the same life path. And I had a lot of my first experiences with my little brother. I didn't even know what last call was for until I met him. The first time he came down to Missoula to go out with me, we'd been out drinking and bar hopping, and it's 2 in the morning at Charlie B's. They call last call, he walks up to the bar, he orders 3 beers and 3 shots, and he drank them in 5 minutes. And he just was unstoppable, and he was so fun. We would just stay up all night playing guitar and hand drums until they called the cops on us. And then we would laugh at the cops because we were like, it's Friday night in Missoula. What did you expect? So I just couldn't keep up with the guy. I gave it my best shot. And for 2 years, I tried to keep up. But after a couple of years, I realized, man, I can't keep doing this. And I tried to get my life together, I tried to stop drinking, tried to stop doing all the other stuff. But I was still chasing this girl in Whitefish. And she invited me to her housewarming party on Valentine's Day. And I said, well, if I'm going to come to your housewarming party on Valentine's Day, I'm going to break you up with your boyfriend. I'm just going to kiss you in front of him. We'll get in a fight. And then, ta-da, I'll be your boyfriend. So, I went up to Whitefish with evil intentions. And I get up there and I get to the party and everything's going great, right according to plan. And I get a call about 10 or so that evening. I pick up the phone, and who is it? It's my little brother. And he's like, "Hey, I called to tell you I love you." And I'm like, "Tim, where are you, man?" He's like, "I'm at the Rainbow Bar." And I was like, he's obviously drunk out of his mind. So I was like, "Don't go anywhere. I'm going to come and get you." And he started laughing. He says, "You're going to drive all the way from Missoula, Montana to pick me up from the Rainbow Bar and get me right home." And I said, "Nope. I actually happen to be in Whitefish, so I'm going to come get you." So I left the party, and I got in my car, and I was pretty angry. I was frustrated with this guy. And so as I'm driving, I'm working up this whole lecture in my mind. I'm going to give it to him. And I get to the Rainbow, and I pick him up. And we're driving him back. Driving him to his trailer, to his fiance's house. Now, Tim, he was actually a recovering meth addict. And he'd been on and off meth and Oxycontin, back and forth. So to Tim, alcoholism was a recovery program. A lot of people, recovering alcoholics, will become chain smokers. Tim, recovering meth addict, became an alcoholic. This was actually the best he'd ever been doing in his whole life. He had a house, he had a fiance. But we get back there, and his fiance and stepkids are there, and he walks into the trailer. He trips over this broken TV, and she's just like, "Tom, you got to get him out of here. I don't want him around the kids." So I was like, "Okay, I understand." So we go out on the porch, and I'm going to let him have it. So I tell him, "Tim, you are impossible to love. You are destroying yourself. Like, what is your problem? Do you hate yourself? Are you mad at God? Do you have some kind of bitterness or anger? What is going on?" And he looked at me and he said, "I made my peace with God. I don't have a problem with anything. It's the people. Too many people have hurt me too badly. And I just can't. I can't stop. I can't change." And I wasn't going to let up. I was like, "Man, you can change. Anybody can change. I'm trying to turn my life around. You can do it. Like, come with me." And he says, "I can't change. I'll never change." And the more he'd said that, the more frustrated I got. And I'm finally just really in his face, and I'm like, that's not true. You can change. And he looks me right in the face, and he said, "Tom, I'll never change. I've seen it. I'm going to die." He said, "I love you. Goodbye." And I was even more angry. I was like, it's impossible. You don't know that. You can change. You just got to try. And so I just, he wasn't listening. I said everything I had to say, and I walked away. I got my car, and I drove back to Missoula, and I was deeply frustrated, but I was confused, and I wanted to believe so badly that people change, that I could change, that Tim could change. And 4 days later, 6 in the morning, my phone rang. It was my mom. She was crying. And I said, I know. Tim's dead. And she said, how do you know? I said, he told me. And that began a decade of a journey of living my life as a memorial for my little brother Tim, to do all the things that he'll never be able to do and to experience all the things he'll never experience. And I got that phone call and I went to my fridge and I got my last beer. I went outside and I opened it up and I poured it on the ground. And it's not been an easy road. I didn't find sobriety right away. A week here, a month, 6 months, still going. But I realized along the way that the strongest thing that I can do is to admit that people hurt me and to feel my feelings. And the bravest thing that I can do is to choose to trust people and give them a chance. And so that's what I do every day. And I do it all for Tim.
Here's to Tim. Thanks, Tom. Our next storyteller is Kali Neumeister. Kali is 33 years old and was born and raised here in Missoula. A counselor by trade, Kali enjoys the quiet life of reading and storytelling and the adventures of skiing and scuba diving. Please welcome Kali Neumeister.
Pregnancy is not what you see in the movies. Oftentimes in the movies, they portray pregnancy as a woman who runs out of some important meeting because she feels nauseous. She barely makes it to the bathroom to throw up. Then she looks at her calendar and calculates and says, maybe I should take a pregnancy test. Then you flash forward and you see her for her first ultrasound appointment. She gets excited and you see the bump, gradually develop through the film. And at the end, it's this really dramatic, moment. Either there's a big contraction and they say, oh my goodness, the baby's coming, we gotta go. Or the water breaks at the most inopportune time with friends or at a restaurant. My experience with pregnancy was a little bit different. After I found out I was pregnant, I go on my chart and I contact my doctor and say, hey, I had a positive pregnancy test. And they say, congratulations, we'll see you in a month. Oh, okay, well, what do I do in the meantime? Oh, yeah, sorry, here's a pamphlet you can read. Okay, so take my prenatals, don't drink alcohol, avoid substances. What about the diet stuff? Okay, cool. So then you go to your first doctor's appointment. That is my child right there. Spoiler alert. So then you go to your first appointment, you get your ultrasound, they say everything looks good, we'll keep following up every month. And then you hit about your 28 weeks of pregnancy and you go in for your glucose test, which I have a few pregnant people in my life, so I did know about this, but not from the movies, for the record. So you go in for your glucose test and you know you're pretty healthy going into your pregnancy, so it's a surprise when you fail the first test. right? Then you go through your second test and you're not quite sure what the results will be. You have to fast and drink this awful sugary liquid, and then, they tell you, all right, well, you have gestational diabetes, which is something that was surprising to me. I had to be on a pretty rigid diet, and you test your blood sugar 4 times a day, make sure the baby's not getting too big. You have to go in for a lot of appointments. And that was challenging. I've never had a lot of exposure to the medical world besides just my regular exams, so that was hard. I had to worry a lot about her getting too big, her having complications, but things were okay. They stabilized. So we're going through this process of being on this new diet, and things are going okay. Well, then July 24th, 2024 hits, and I'm about a week and a half out from my due date. And I'm starting to get contractions through the week, and once again, it's not something where you just rush off to the hospital at this point. You have to wait. How long are the contractions lasting, and how long is it between each contraction? So my husband and I are at home. We're just relaxing, watching Netflix after a day of work, and we get an alert on our phones that says, severe storm warning. And then the power goes out. I don't know if you know where you were at on July 24th, 2024, but I was 38 weeks pregnant, having contractions, not knowing what to do with my evening because I'm not quite ready to go to the hospital. So what do we decide to do instead? We don't have our entertainment for the evening, so we decide to, look through our list of things we have to get done, set up crib, check, clear out the nursery, almost check. We had a desk we wanted to assemble, before the baby arrived. So what do? We drag this, this box out, we pull out this desk, and we have pieces all over our kitchen island. I put on my headlamp, and my husband has his headlamp on. We're lighting candles, and we just got to get this desk done before the baby gets here, right? It's the only logical thing. And so I hand him a wrench, and I hand him a bag of the tools. Just give me a sec. Okay, I'm good. What's the next step? Because there's no owner's manual for what do you do when there's a major storm event. But we have a manual to assemble the desk. So let's do that. The contractions slow down, and my husband says, the storm is over now. I kind of want to go check things out, see how things fared, see how our town is doing. We had some branches fly across our yard. I later heard that my sister and brother-in-law, they had their cottonwood ancestral tree pull up and drop right in front of their house. We heard about, trees coming down on top of roofs and cars and totaling them, 100-mile-per-hour winds on Mount Jumbo. But we got through that, right? I didn't have the baby. So then the next morning, we both go on to our separate work days, and about midday, I noticed that I had some symptoms that I wasn't really sure about. So I go to the bathroom, and I pull down my underwear, and I look down, and there's a little bit of fluid. So I take a picture, shoot it off to my sister. She has 3 kids, she has her MD, so I thought she'd be the best person to talk to about this. There's no water gushing, so I'm probably okay, right? So at the end of the day, she says, you know what, you probably should just call labor and delivery just to be sure. So I go ahead and do that, and I say, here are my symptoms. I start having contractions, but they weren't that intense yet. This is what occurred today. And they said, okay, well, we can kind of see how things go. I said, oh, I forgot to mention, at her last appointment on Tuesday, just a few days ago, she was breech. And for those of you who don't know about what that means, her head was straight up and her butt was straight down. And we knew this. We knew that we should go to the hospital if things progressed. And they said, you don't have to rush, but we would recommend getting a bag together as quickly as possible and heading in. So I called my mom on the phone. I said, I don't think we're having the baby today, but we're heading to the hospital. I just wanted to let you know. So we do that. We get our bags packed, and we say, we'll probably just check in with them, go get takeout, head home, relax. I didn't have any too intense contractions that day. So then we get to the hospital, and they do their little swab. And at that point, we're just relaxing and hanging out. And I get a test alert that says, positive for amniotic fluid. And my doctor walks in, and she says, we're having a baby today. She explained to us that during major bariatric pressure changes, something can happen called the preterm rupture of the membranes, which means your labor doesn't progress very far, but your water can break. And when we had driven up, the parking lot was full of labor and delivery cars. I wasn't the only one. So we go back and they begin the process of going through the C-section. And they numb me from the chest down, and my husband and I are behind this tarp. And for those of you who have been pregnant or have had a C-section, know what that feels like. And they start to pull and tug, and I feel this very bizarre pulling and tugging sensation. And I feel kind of dumb in this moment, but I'm like, have you started yet? And she says, oh, we are well on our way. And she pulls our daughter out, and she roars like a lion. And our doctor says that's a really good sign. She's born the sign of the Leo. She was born the year of the dragon. And she was born amidst the greatest storm that I have ever been witness to. And I think back to Marion Zimmer Bradley's sci-fi novel, Storm Queen. There's this character who, when she would feel great emotions, the storm would rage around her, lightning bolts and wind. And I'm saying, I think you're our storm queen. You brought this storm, and you brought as you went into this world. And I looked down at her with her bright blue eyes, her stormy blue eyes, and her dark hair at that time. And to this day, as you heard earlier, she still hollers. She still roars like that lion. And dragons are a big part of it, too. The Chinese sign of dragons is also very special to us. And I look down at her and I say, this is your new home now. You're safe. If we can survive this, we can survive anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Kali. And thank you to all of our storytellers so far this evening. Thank you to our American Sign Language interpreters and to our sponsors. Thank you to our story sponsor, The Good Food Store, helping us to pay our storytellers, and to Wide Tide Designs for buying the food to feed the storytellers at the group workshop. Thanks to our media sponsors, MissoulaEvents.net and Missoula Broadcasting Company, including the family of ESPN Radio, the Trail 103.3, Jack FM, and Missoula Source for Modern Hits, U1045. Thanks to our in-kind sponsors, Float Missoula and Joyce of Tile. Learn about Joyce at joyceoftile.com. All right, I'm getting on. Here we go. When you patronize these businesses, please thank them for their support of live storytelling in Missoula. We're going to take a 10-minute intermission, stop by the bar and grab an NA beer brewed by the only brewery in the state that brews NA beer, Imagination Brewing Company. After that 10 minutes, when we return, we'll have audience participation. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. You are offered the opportunity to submit your own Hold My Beer story anonymously. And our volunteers, Ren and Lauren, have sorted through some of those and found the ones that resonated the most for them. Doesn't mean they're the best ones. And they're going to read a handful of those for you right now. Wanted to say thanks to everybody who purchased the non-alcoholic beer. Imagination Brewing Company generously provided those for us, and all of the proceeds go straight to Tell Us Something, so thank you for that. We sold out of all that beer. That was the first time that Pilsner has ever been made available to the public, so I hope you enjoyed it. You can get more of it at Imagination Brewing Company over there on West Broadway. For now, I will turn it over to Lauren and Ren. Thank you so much for being here.
Driving from Arica, Chile to Santiago, Chile, 4 dudes, case of beer, bottle of Pisco being passed around, get pulled over. Officers proceed to flash 10 fingers 10 times, indicating 100. Then point down the road and flash 10 fingers 15 times, indicating 150. We thought that they wanted a bribe, but they were just informing four dumb gringos the speed limit.
A friend and I climbed on top a 3-story building using a single old parachute cord. One of us opposite sides of the building, using each other as counterweights. I still have the cord. I use it for hanging plants.
I'm from Florida, learned to water ski in Biscayne Bay, lots of water. Was in the military in Great Falls at 20 years old. Haven't water skiing on the Missouri River. Hold my beer, I'm a badass skier. No one told me sandbars. Hauling ass on one ski, leaned to the right, way to the right. I hit a sandbar going so fast, the ski stopped, and I bounced on the water and sand over. Bouncing and tumbling, beat to shit. When I stopped, the ski caught up with me and smacked me in the butt. So much for Montana water skiing. I never again tried to ski here. I just held other people's beers while they made fools of themselves.
I found out my birth mom, who died in a crash when I was 2, had been adopted. Due to the unsolved mystery TV shows, I found birth mother's family. When we met, I found my mom's sister had a daughter too. She named her Phyllis, born on August 3rd, 1960. And by considered, my name is Phyllis, born August 30, 1960. 2 sisters who didn't even know each other existed, named their daughters the same name, born on the same day, days apart. Hold my beer.
While visiting Amsterdam, we decided to join a pub crawl tour of the red light district. We met some friendly Canadians who were all about having Vegas bombs at each bar we stopped at. It was all fun and games until I found myself throwing up all over the sidewalk right in front of an exotic dancer in her window booth. Started stumbling my way home and could see my hotel across the way. But due to the canal system, I couldn't get to it without getting totally turned around and lost. Next thing I knew, I was wandering down a highway and a Dutch ambulance picked me up. Lucky for me, ambulance rides are free in Europe, and I got dropped off at my hotel with only a stern talking to about walking on the highway. I love Amsterdam.
I got my nerve to ask this older woman out on a date. She accepted, and after dinner and beer and a movie, I was driving her home when she got sick and threw up out the window. She then said, "We have to go back and pick up my teeth."
I once was at a comedy show in which they requested the audience members write in if they were related to anyone famous. This is my submission. My ex-husband's 4th cousin was the first bad guy killed in Die Harder. He was the bad guy that killed the front desk clerk and took his place. Then Bruce Willis came in and killed him. I won.
The time I kept eye contact with Mike Trush continuously and then smiled. Nodding my head, I began the slow motion journey of approaching them, not trying to rush, but with intention. I finally arrived in front of them. I awkwardly stood behind them for a moment and said, "Hey." They smiled and grabbed their hand as they went outside. We both had drinks and were grinning. "Hold my beer," I said, and then I went for it and kissed them. All right, last one. When I was in high school, I was riding horses with two friends. Two of us were old hats at swimming in the river with our horses. One was not. The swimming hole was a channel that rounded a bend with high cliffs. The trick was to ride your horse to the cliffs, slip off, and hold your horse's tail as they swam back to the shore. The newbie went in with her horse, but the horse panicked and tried to climb the cliff wall. The girl slid off the horse and came back to us. We watched the horse thrash until it rolled over and went under. I had no choice because we would be in deep shit if that horse drowned. I jumped in and swam to where the horse went under, about 30 yards out. I dove down and luckily found the horse's head and pulled up on the bridle. The horse swam a little with me, but I had to hold its head up with one arm and stroke with the other. Oh, and I had Levi's on, and it felt like swimming in mud. I would stop and feel for the bottom about 3 times. Finally, I was able to stand up and held the horse's head above water and used that leverage to keep myself standing. It just laid there until, boom, it came bolting up and was able to stand. I was exhausted, the horse was alive, and no parent would ever know.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Ren. How's everybody doing tonight? Good. Opening the second half of our evening is Mark Schoenfeld. Mark has been a lot of things: a window washer, a screen printer, public radio host, middle school teacher, an adjunct professor, to name a few. One thing he's always been is a writer of stories, songs, and poems, which led him to earn his MFA in creative writing from the University of Montana. Mark is a disgruntled Texan, and his family now calls Western Montana home. His work has appeared in print, online, and on air, which you can find at markscho.com. Please welcome Mark Schoenfeld.
I need to update my website, so don't go for like 3 months. I should start by saying that I can't tell you where this story takes place. The main reason is that I would like the option to go back. If I, wanted to. I was a sophomore, just finished my sophomore year of college. I'd never been abroad, but here I was, halfway across the world. And that night, one night, we went out on town, a couple guys from the program and myself. We were on a mission to buy bootleg DVDs. So we were in this open air market, and the two guys and I had invited this guy I'd met in the country to help us because we had no idea what we were doing. And he was going to show us around this open air market and teach us how to find bootleg DVDs. And it was a lot like I would imagine trying to find like a woodpecker or something in Greeno Park, because there's a call. It's kind of staccato. It's D, D. And you listen and you kind of move around past like some fake Gucci purses and D, VD. past the row of CDs and other trinkets, there in an alley was a man with 2 suitcases. And I imagine probably sunglasses. I can't really remember, but he was trying to look nondescript. And we went, and we had invited this friend, Jimmy, along, and he was talking to the man, and he was like, okay, and he motioned for us to come back. And he opened up these 2 suitcases, and it looked like he had knocked off a Blockbuster video. They were overflowing with DVDs, and we were just like digging through them because this was a long time ago. DVDs were a really big deal. I don't even think Netflix was mailing them yet. And if I was a college student, so I wouldn't have been able to afford it. And these were $1 each. Anyway, I was glad Jimmy was there because he was able to kind of point out some issues that we might have with these DVDs. Like, for example, it was 2002. The third Lord of the Rings movie hadn't come out yet, but there it was in this suitcase. Return of the King. Except instead of Viggo Mortensen, it was Tom Cruise. And I had to buy it, and it was legend, and it was still a good purchase. And the same was true. Well, Jimmy also noted that there would be some movies that were in theaters, and they were probably filmed surreptitiously. So I bought The Bourne Identity with Matt Damon. Terrible quality. Pretty good movie. He's all like confused about who he is, and he's a spy. So we bought some DVDs, went and had some food, and someone got the idea over beers to pretend like I was famous. See, my 2 friends in the group both had family from this country, so they could really blend in. They could speak the language, and Jimmy obviously was from the country. I was not, and I stood out. And I can't tell you what country it was, but you can just guess that I stood out. And so they said, let's pretend like you're famous. It's not a big tourist town. And I said, okay. And they said, who do you look like? Who could we say you are? And I said, well, I've been told I look like Matt Damon. And you'd have to imagine me skinnier, with more hair on my head and less on my face, but a little bit. I also get Louis Anderson, which keeps me humble. So anyway, Jimmy and I go to this fountain area where people are taking pictures and hanging out and talking, and a couple minutes later, my friends from the program come and approach us, talking excitedly, come up to me, want to approach me, but Jimmy's kind of holding them back. But then I'm like, no, come on. And they come, and I sign autographs and take turns taking pictures. And as we had hoped, there were like 2 more people, maybe 4. And then I, kind of repeated it. And Jimmy's like talking to the people on the outskirts. And I can't understand a word he's saying except for Hollywood and Matt Damon. But I'm just signing, taking pictures with people, and I'm just caught up in it. And then I look around. If you were to zoom out, it would be this one white speck in just a sea of non-white people. Basically the inverse of Missoula. Not that I can relate, but I start to get nervous, and I look at my friends on the outside of the circle now, the ones from the program, and they're whiter than I am. And past them, there are these like 2 kind of official-looking people watching us and not happy. And I turn to Jimmy, and I say, Jimmy, we got to go right now. And he's got this like shit-eating grin. And I'm so glad he didn't ask me why, because I would have had to lie to him again. I had told him that I was a foreign exchange student, which is what my visa said. But the truth is, I was an undercover evangelical Christian missionary. And I was breaking every rule in the rule book. I had come to the country a few weeks before and spent all this time in this basement, so you can imagine, with this guy who looked like a youth pastor telling us how to do things. And I'll never forget his goateed face, the way it distorted when he told us how Christians were still persecuted in this country. And so they gave us code words, like God the Father was Fred, Jesus was Jed, and the Holy Ghost was Casper. Christians were family, and the organization, which you've maybe heard of, I won't say. They're real crusaders, though. They were called the Company, which is what they call the CIA in spy movies. Let's see. There was competition for adding people to our family, you know. So we called the Mormon and Jehovah's Witness missionaries Momos and Jojos. And this was fed to us. And then there would be competition for our time. So say someone wanted to come and like practice their English on us and not want to receive the gift of eternal salvation. They called them leeches, which I found only slightly less offensive than their term for the whole mission, which was the Orient Express. I think they've changed it. At this point, I was pretty disgusted with this organization. I decided to, still do it, but I was gonna do it how I thought Jed would do it. It was like, WWJD, what would Jed do? I'd read the Bible, which the textbook, and I wanted that kind of authentic faith. So I called up, after that night, kind of racked with guilt and just really wanting to be there for my friend that I'd made, Jimmy. I called him up, and we went to the tea shop where we had first met. And like that night, we started with tea and switched to beers, and as things got looser, I told him the truth, that I was a family member and that I wanted to tell him about this guy named Jed. And he told me that he did feel like something was wrong in his life and that he did need something. He said he often felt like he was a ship lost at sea. And I was like, I've got a textbook story for that one. And I was really surprised. He was so open, and we met again and again every day after that until it was time to leave. And I was so disappointed. I wanted to go home. I wanted to sit on a toilet. But I didn't want to leave Jimmy. The company told me it was my hubris, that I wanted to convert it. But what the truth is, the night before I left, Jimmy looked at me and he said, I am 60% sure Jed is real, but I'm 100% sure I'm a sinner. And the company told me that I had done the hardest part. I wanted to go back, but it turns out they don't let you go be a missionary if you're not a Christian anymore. So I'll probably never get to see Jimmy again. I'm almost willing to believe in the afterlife, though, just to have that chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next up is Tess Sneeringer, who has lived in Missoula for 6 years and landed here after spending the first half of her 20s as an outdoor educator across the American West, far away from her childhood home in Washington, D.C. Telling a story for Tell Us Something became a Missoula bucket list item after she saw her first show in 2019. So she told a story in 2021. But then she stayed in Missoula longer than she thought she would, so she'd figured she'd do it again. Her first appearance featured a survival story set in the Utah desert, and she's back tonight with another survival tale, this time of high school social life. Please welcome Tess Sneeringer.
So there I was, sitting on the hood of my mom's pink Toyota Avalon with my twin brother, David, and our friend Paul, waiting for the cop in front of us to call backup. It was 2009, we were juniors in high school, and it was Halloween. And we got ourselves into this situation because I decided to go to a party I was barely invited to. This was really David's friend's party, and he was always Mr. Popular. And I had my friends, and we knew our place, and we were not popular. And that is kind of how David and I existed in elementary school, middle school, high school, the whole way through. So much so that when we got to this new high school, on my first or second day, I'm still meeting people, and they're like, "Oh, you're David's sister." And I was like, "Oh, that was fast." And I guess I gave my parents a little relief by making friends in the first place, because I saw an email left up one time on the family desktop that said, "Tess had friends over last night. Thank God." But it was junior year at this point, and the social standings had been set. But tonight, David knew he needed a ride home from this party, and he wasn't cruel, so he invited me to the party. And yes, I had my friends, we had our place, but if you're not popular, like, okay, maybe tonight I could be popular. And so I go to the party, but I go late, and I leave DC, where we grew up, and go out into the suburbs to this house I've never been to, in a neighborhood called Chevy Chase. That is the name of the neighborhood. And this is the land of manicured lawns, big houses, cul-de-sacs, like safe, quiet streets. And again, I don't know this girl well enough to ever have been to her house, so I'm like trying to decipher the house addresses. This is before smartphone GPS. And I finally find it, and I pull over into the first parking spot I find, and I do have a flip phone, so I text my brother, "I'm here." And he comes out, and he's dressed as a ninja, so I can barely see him, and he's like beckoning me from the bushes. And I'm like, okay. So I follow him through this gate, down the stairs, into this basement where there's full high school rager ensuing. There's Natty Light, there's beer pong, there's scantily clad Halloween costumes, and I am dressed as this like punk goth girl. And I have a black wig and black lipstick and fake piercings and like a studded belt and combat boots, and I love that Halloween costume. But that night, it might have worked a little too well, because I went into the party and barely anybody recognized me. And I really hope that's because it was the costume and not just because they really didn't know who I was. But I tried my best, I socialized, I held my own for about an hour until we hear pounding upstairs on the front door. And sure enough, out the like basement windows, we see red and blue lights, and the party is officially busted. And despite the host having told everybody that if you go out the back door, it only leads to the front, everybody goes out the back door. And people are hopping fences, army crawling through bushes. It is a complete cluster. Everybody's scattering, and I just glue myself to my brother because I have no experience running from the cops. This is well outside my comfort zone. And our friend Paul attaches his fate to ours and joins our team of escape. And so we make our way around to the front of the house where we're kind of in the bushes, but we can see the street. And we see the cop car kind of rolling down the hill away from us, chasing our friends. And so we make a break for it because I parked the car a little bit up the hill. And the second I get my hand on the driver's side door, I see the reverse lights from that cop car speed way back up the hill at like 20 miles an hour and stop right in front of us. Officer comes out, introduces herself as Officer Becky, and she asks me, "Do you know where you've parked?" Like, where I've parked? What? And I look around and I see that I am blocking the neighbor's driveway. They have a car in that driveway. And in the following moments of silence, I realize that I am the only reason the cops have busted this party that I was barely invited to. So I turn back to Officer Becky, who has a second question, which is, have you been drinking? And I say no, because I have not been drinking. And she walks closer to me, and she smells me, and she goes, "You've been drinking." And I'm like, what do you want me to say? But in my head, my father, the ever-present lawyer in my life, has told me that if I ever end up at a busted party while sober, I should tell the cops to say I offered to take a breathalyzer test and make them put it in writing. And so Officer Becky says, "You've been drinking." And I say, "Breathalyze me." And Officer Becky doesn't even have a breathalyzer test. She's a traffic cop. She came to give me a ticket, maybe tow my car, and ended up accidentally busting an underage party. So I'm sitting on this hood with me, my brother, and Paul, who are probably cursing my name, offering to give breathalyzer tests. And we're just waiting there because she has to call backup. And these two fools decide to make polite conversation with Officer Becky. And they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you have to work on Halloween. That's such a bummer." And this cop is like, "Actually, it's my favorite night of the week to work." I'm like, "Wow, okay, super fun loving person here." And then she decides she wants to search us. And again, these two, really emboldened tonight, decide to put their recently learned civil liberties course material to an application and say, "Do you have probable cause?" And she asked them, "Well, do you have any weapons?" My brother is dressed as a ninja. He goes, "I have some nunchucks." These are my nunchucks. I took karate. And he's used them for his costume, hands them over. She searches us. She doesn't find anything. And she asks me for my ID. And I look nothing like my ID. I have a black wig on. I have all this stuff. So I hand it to her, and I'm like ripping everything out of my face. Wig off, piercings out, like trying to smear my makeup, just trying to like, it's me, I swear. And that's about as much as she has to do with us until finally this second cop car comes out. And this guy comes out. He's probably like 20 years old. And he just walks up to me and gives me the breathalyzer test. And I'm like, "I don't know what to do with this. Like, how do you use this thing?" And so he takes it back, he unwraps it, he like undoes the straw, hands it back. And Officer Becky goes, "You can take this, but you're not gonna pass." And in my head, I'm like, hold my LaCroix, watch me. And I blow into this breathalyzer test, hand it back, and I see this young cop just like flip the screen a little bit to Officer Becky, and then I can see it. And there's 3 beautiful zeros, passed with flying colors. And Officer Becky goes, "Have a safe night." And that's it. So the 3 of us get in the car. You know, we're all mad at each other for how the other handled the situation. But we get back to our house in one piece, and Monday rolls around. And the school day is pretty uneventful for me, but then I get to softball practice. And one of my friends comes up to me, and she's just like, "Hey, are you and Monica okay?" Monica's my softball co-captain. And I'm like, "Why would Monica and I not be okay?" She goes, "Oh, well, she was at that party and she got her 3rd citation and now she has to go to court." And in my head, 2 things. One, the first 2 citations were not my fault. The 3rd one, definitely, yeah, I will take that one. But the first 2 were not. The second thing that I realized is my name has probably gotten drugged through every AOL instant message group chat, like every side conversation. People probably hate my guts, but I'm not even worth being angry to my face about. I'm that unimportant. And in that era, that was kind of worked out in my favor because I didn't have to deal with their hate to my face. And I can't say I dabbled that much into the popular crowd anymore in high school. But we made it. My friends and I graduated. College got better. Years after college got better. And so I just want to say, if any of you are in high school or have a high schooler for which any of this sounds familiar, this too will pass. And if you peaked in high school, I am so sorry. Thank you.
Thanks, Tess. Kelly Provost is a survivor, a thriver, a liver, and a lover. She loves Duran Duran, fashion, laughing and dancing. Watching people be proud of themselves is her favorite thing ever. Her goal is to create a community of people who love themselves so much that they inspire others to do the same. A life coach, a life lover, a life liver, please welcome Kelly Provost.
We were about ready to walk in to a production of The Lion King in London's West End when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, I always knew my breasts were going to kill me. When I was 12, I thought it was going to be from embarrassment because I realized for the first time that they're supposed to be there. 13 and 14, more of the same. I'm buying bras for just very little content, but it's making me feel a little better about myself to, be a part of middle school. 14 and 15 come, and boy howdy, so did the knockers. Violently, seemingly overnight, they appear. Think 2 globes on a stick. Not what I ordered. Thank you very much. So the tone of the embarrassment shifts from non-existent to, oh my God, I gotta hide these ladies. A very intricate, very large lever and pulley system exists to keep them bound and where they're supposed to be and hidden, saying goodbye to button-up shirts and sassy straps and, God forbid, strapless on any occasion at all. And it just becomes this whole thing. So from about 16, I would say, till 38, it was hide and seek. It was, under pillows, hiding my bra, hooking up, and just lamenting and loathing the breast that I had so desperately in 7th grade. I must increase my bust. Be careful what you wish for. So I had looked into getting a breast reduction before. And when I was about 21, I had some good insurance. And I made the appointment and I went in, and they had said that that was all fine and dandy, except for that I wouldn't be able to nurse future babies. I have no idea why at 22 that mattered. I mean, the way I was living my life was not conducive to a child in any form, but I thought, oh no, I better not do that. And so I didn't. So life goes on. I'm having the boobs. It's all a big mess. And I meet the love of my life, and we start having beautiful babies. And finally, these large, ridiculous mammies do their job, and they nourish 2 beautiful, healthy babies. So by the time I'm 38, I'm back on the breast reduction train, thinking I might do that. It took a while to convince the insurance company that running, as I am a runner, with size, we're talking like double K, shit you've never heard of. They don't sell them in Dillard's, y'all. I'm sending pictures after a 20-mile run, like that ought to do it. Blood, ugh. They finally agreed to this breast reduction. So at 43 years of age in 2015, I got it. And you're going, what took me so long? Well, I'll tell you this. I finally had the figure I had wanted. I was proportioned. I was happy. They were beautiful. And so from 43 to 44 to 45, I bought all the clothes I wanted to. I do love fashion. I was having so much fun with it. And I decided I was having so much fun that I was going to take these beautiful ladies, my husband, our 2 young sons, and my sister to Europe. So we all went, my family and my chest and myself, and my cute suitcase filled with a lot of clothes that I was excited to wear on many different occasions. We were starting off in London, and we're going to do a week in Paris and then 2 weeks in Spain. So I cultivated my outfits carefully. So here we are in London. It is July 5th of 2017. We had landed in Europe on July 2nd, so we're just day 3 in. We'd had a day of sightseeing, and we're going to have a little lie about in our flat in London before the night's events. We were really excited about this one. The kids, because they like The Lion King. Of course, it's on London's famed West End. We know the production is brilliant. Costumes, acting, all of the events. I'm mostly looking forward to looking good with London's elite in the West End, having a fabulous meal, soaking it all in, nodding. Yes, I see you. You look so good. Me too, right? And, just really enjoying a night out with London's culture. As one whilst with expectations, they begin being dashed almost immediately. What turned into a 3-hour break turned into a 2-hour break, turned into a 1-hour break, and I don't look fabulous. I'm hot. I hate being hot. We're late. I hate being late. And instead of my fabulous sit-down dinner with really unsensible shoes that we took an Uber to, it's looking like we might not eat at all, and we might not make it to the theater on time. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. So we hop on the London metro system, and we pop off at Piccadilly Circus. Think Times Square, think super crowded, think any other time in my life I'd be soaking it all in, loving every minute of it. But instead, I'm feeling real gross because we'd eaten McDonald's. We were very overdressed. I'm hot, I'm sweaty, but we land in Piccadilly Circus, very crowded, very busy, lots of bodies that I didn't create or am not married to or related to touching me, and we're late, and it's starting to be a real problem for me, and I'm losing the battle to not ruin the evening for everybody, and I death grip my 6-year-old son's hand, and it's hot and it's sweaty, but I ain't losing this boy. And I'm kind of watching my husband's black head bob as he navigates us to what we know is the West End and the theater. And we're looking for that marquee that says The Lion King. And my phone rings. Now, you might think that from what I just described, that I would fumble for my phone and it falls off and breaks, and that's the story. But it's not, because I'm waiting for this call. Tom Petty had it right. The waiting is the hardest part. So my hand finds its way to my purse. I do not let go of these hot 5 fingers that are my child's hand, and I grab my phone, and it does not ring a second time. My sister and my husband lock eyes with me. We know that this is the news that we've been waiting to hear since we left Missoula on July 2nd. Is this Kelly Provost? It is. This is Dr. Ty. It is breast cancer. Hey, thanks, Dr. Ty. That's what I thought. Okay, gotta run. Bing. Now, when there is a crack in the universe such as that, you sort of remember everything that happened before then and very little of what happened immediately after. But I can tell you it was something like Doctor Strange or The Matrix, but without the capes or the portal or the drugs. And I took a second. My sister, my husband, I don't know if I uttered it, but we all simultaneously knew that I had just been diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer. I didn't know what kind. I didn't know how fast moving. I wasn't sure if I could continue on for the rest of my vacation. And time didn't stand still, as it turns out. So we're still rushing, we're still going, and we make our way into that dang theater. Stunned, not completely surprised, but oof, what a feeling. Never have I been so grateful for the lights to dim, so that I could come into my body. My death flashed before me. And unlike other times I'd fantasized about my death, because I had, let's face it, this time I wasn't thinking, oh, they'll be so sad. I was like, man, I married a good man. He'll remarry and she will love those kids. My sister has the best relationship with them that she possibly could. They will miss me, but they could read my diary because I have conducted myself in such a way that I leave behind a legacy of love and beauty. So intermission hits, lights come up. I tell my husband to go get the kids some souvenirs, and I get the information that I was really looking for, which was, can I stay on vacation, or is this shit super serious that I need to fly out early? We'd already discussed such a proposition. I make my way outdoors, and I get on the horn, and I reach St. Ronnie at Community Medical Center. She is a nurse navigator, and she starts telling me information that I'm digging. She starts saying things like, it's stage 1. It's slow moving. It's the good kind of cancer. There's no such thing, FYI. I love you, Ronnie, but no. And I'm relieved. I'm relieved that I can stay on my vacation. I decide I'm going to be done trying to watch my figure so that by the time I get to Spain, I look great in my bathing suit. Because here's the thing. Please don't wait for a cancer diagnosis to eat all the tiramisu, extra butter on your bread, to live your life out loud, to rip your top off in every beach in Spain, which I did. I encourage you to start living now, and you can keep your top on if you want.
Thank you, Kelly. Closing out the show, Jeff Ducklow has always loved nature. As a youngster, Jeff Ducklow spent most of his free time playing in the woods and felt more at home than he did anywhere indoors. He considered nature his friend even into adulthood when he decided to turn his passion for nature into a career as an adventure guide. Yes, Jeff felt he and nature were buddies. A belief he wholeheartedly embraced until the following events shook his faith and gave him more insight into the nature of nature. Please welcome Jeff Ducklow.
Good evening. I can tell you right now, deodorant is useless in these moments. So before I tell you what happened on August 7th, 2015, I need to clear up a couple things. The first thing is, it wasn't when I looked back that I knew what I did was stupid. I knew before I did it that it was stupid. The second thing is, even if you graduate from Princeton Theological Seminary with a master's in divinity, yes, a master of divinity, it doesn't necessarily make you any wiser. And for those of you who might judge me as a man with a death wish, I say no. It was not a death wish. It was an adventure wish. So skipping over the part where a seminary grad who is headed for ministry becomes an adventure guide heading towards a glacier, I'm going to save that for the next Tell Us Something with the theme, Hold My Bible. But since this is Hold My Beer, it was a warm Alaskan summer day, and I was paddling in a remote fjord all by myself because it was my day off from sea kayak guiding. It's at this time I got one of the worst ideas I've ever had. It was the most unrecommended, the most dangerous thing I could do that day. I decided I would approach one of the most powerful, unpredictable forces in nature. I would approach on my sea kayak a tidewater glacier and touch it with my bare hand. Now again, I did not have a death wish, but I have to be honest, I always admired family trees that had really interesting deaths. And I thought, being crushed by a glacier, that's pretty good. I had seen others like trampled by elephants in Borneo or died after catastrophic igloo collapse. I never wanted a mundane death like died while choking on a hot dog at the state fair. That wouldn't do. But crushed by a glacier, not too shabby. So I decided today was the day. As I started paddling, I'm thinking, this is a terrible idea. Now, the glacier I'm talking about is huge. At the face of it, where it comes into the water, it's a mile long. It's about 500 feet high. It stretches back. It's basically a river of ice going 13 miles up to some very high elevation, where it's a 700 square mile ice field. So, I don't know if you've been around glaciers, but it's basically this river of ice always moving downhill. And the Tidewater Glacier in particular is very unstable because as it comes into the ocean, that water is starting to erode the foot of the glacier, making it even more unstable as the rest of it continues to move downhill. And sometimes they pop, they crack, and at other times it might sound like an incredible boom of thunder when a big chunk of ice will break off the face of the glacier and land in the water. In fact, it's so compelling, cruise ships would come and they would watch the glacier calve. Now, as a guide, I knew this, and yet I continued forward. The other thing about the glacier is when it calves off, it leaves big icebergs in the water. And in this case, it really matters because you've heard of the phrase tip of the iceberg. These tips were huge. These were very large tips. After the last story, I want you to hear I'm saying tips. Some of these tips were the size of submarines or a house. And what that meant as a sea kayaker, if you're cruising by one and it decides to roll like they do, it will scoop you up to an early grave. So you try to stay away from the berg. Remember the Titanic. So now I'm paddling, and if you've ever been in Alaska, you also know it's so huge that it's almost impossible to judge distance. I'd never gone anywhere this far with my clients. So an hour and a half had gone by, and it seemed I wasn't much closer. And then I get to the spot where I'd seen cruise ships stop, where they watched the glacier calving. And calving, by the way, doesn't involve cattle. I was confused for about a month up there, looking for cows in the water. Someone help them. It's just big chunks of ice that break off and become icebergs. So I get to this place, and it's a half mile back, because that's the law, that a cruise ship needs to stay a half mile back from the glacier, because when a big chunk of ice breaks off, it can create a wave as high as 30 feet. It can also create an underwater tsunami, just as large, which could capsize a large boat. And just for reference, I'm in a sea kayak, which is basically a 14-foot tube of plastic. And I'm going past that mark, and I'm thinking, this is a terrible idea. But somehow, I feel like I'm being sucked in against my will. I thought I heard the ice saying, "Come to the ice." And I'm like, "Yes, my frozen lord." And now I'm getting pretty close, and I see where there's a group of harbor seals. They're hauled up on the ice like they do. And normally they're super cute. They have these big eyes, and they'll pop up next to your kayak and look at you. But this time they look more concerned. I thought I saw one say, "What in the name of humanity?" And I don't know if seals are religious, but I'm pretty sure I saw one of them with his flipper make the sign of the cross. And being seals, they followed me for a while. That's what they do. But then they suddenly disappeared, as if to say, we have pups to feed, we have fishing to do, and even though we're waterproof, this is as far as we go. And now I get to really close to the glacier. I can't see the top of it, just the wall now. And suddenly the temperature plummets. And the katabatic winds, as they call them, are blowing off the glacier. And I'm freezing. There's gear for these kinds of expeditions, but I wasn't wearing it. And I'm getting up closer to the glacier, and it's amazing. It's blue, it's white, and it looks like giant rock crystals rising up from the sea into the sky. It's like I landed on another planet. I'd never been this close before. And then I remember why I went. And I kept on going. And now it's like 50 yards, 25 yards. What am I doing? But I'm in too deep, my friends. And now it's 10 yards, 10 feet, and I stop paddling. I drift in. Doink. I'm looking straight up, 500 feet of ice over my head, and I don't know if I touched it too hard. I looked to my left, and a tower of ice, probably the size of 2 Wilma buildings stacked on top of each other, was slowly starting to lean away. And I just went, oh my God. My heart was beating so fast, I couldn't feel it. I was just frozen in disbelief. And then I thought, here comes the Darwin Award. And I had certainly earned it. It was nature's way of saying, excuse me, we don't think you should reproduce. And it was a cold hand on the shoulder saying, we're going to have to take you out of the gene pool. And then I thought I heard the ice again saying, come towards the light, Jeff. Come towards the light. And for a moment I thought, okay. I thought I didn't really have a choice anyway. Then I thought I heard the voices of loved ones saying, don't go towards the light. And then I thought I heard the voice of my very practical mother saying, oh, great. Now who's going to mow my lawn? And just then, the will to live was ignited. And with an incredible no. That's what it felt like. I paddled as hard as I could. And I was just waiting for this multi-story wave to crash down on me with huge icebergs. And I saw a huge iceberg in front of me, so I started going towards it, and I was able to get to the far side of it. And as I did, I heard an amazing sucking sound. And I thought, this is it. And I looked over to my shoulder, and this iceberg is about the size of a small house, went straight up out of the water like an atomic cloud. And I go, this is it. But I also remember thinking, so that's what the bottom of a glacier looks like. And so I was still paddling for my life when suddenly I realized I was spared. All the energy from that falling tower of ice was absorbed by this iceberg. And then suddenly I looked around, it was sunny, it was warm, and I was alive. And I started paddling in reverence. No more whistling, no more singing. I passed by the seals again, One of them was shaking his head saying, "You lucky son of a bitch." I got back to the lodge. I didn't tell anybody what I'd done. I went into my cabin and I pondered, and I came up with this. I paddled away agnostic on whether or not nature was my friend or my buddy. But I also came out a believer that nature wasn't against me. This experience didn't get me back on the religious road, but I do believe that day I made my peace with God. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to all of our storytellers this evening. Jeremy Keene, Miko Korea, Tom Attard, Colleen Neumeister, Mark Schoenfeld, Tess Sneeringer, Kelly Provost, and Jeff Ducklow. Usually I can tell you when the next show is, but there's so much that we got going on behind the scenes right now that I can't talk about it. I'm not sure when exactly it's going to be or even where. So stay tuned to our social media channels and our newsletter to find out more about that. For now, I say thank you so much for being here. Have an awesome night. Happy New Year.